On tonight's edition of The Best Times, you'll meet the most famous Memphian you've never heard of. We'll explore our own Downton Abbey, the Mallory Neely House. And we'll answer the question, do people get happier as they age? Funding for The Best Times is provided by... Since 1988, the H.W. Durham Foundation has been focused on aging issues, providing grants to programs like The Best Times to enrich and improve the quality of life for our older citizens. The Best Times is the only monthly news magazine exclusively for the age 50-plus reader. Your copy is free at over 200 locations, with important stories and news you don't want to miss. The Best Times is always the best. Trezevant, a life care community, a celebration of life. The responsible decision for your well-being now and in the long term. And being responsible has never been such a hoot. TrezevantManor.org. Hello, I'm Chris Hardaway. Welcome to this edition of The Best Times, a series that looks at life after 50. Chances are you've never heard of Memphian Phoebe Fairgrave Omley, even though she was the first woman in America to hold a civilian pilot's license and was a friend and confidant of Amelia Earhart. Historian Janan Sherman spent 17 years researching and writing the biography of Phoebe Omley, a woman who spent her life walking on air.
Phoebe Omley was born in 1902 and right out of high school decided she wanted to fly, figured out a way to get her hands on an airplane, and taught herself to do stunts, hoping to sell them to the movies.
Phoebe Fairgrave was still a teenager in 1921 when she met World War I veteran Vernon Omley. He was the only pilot at the airport willing to teach a woman how to fly. They teamed up to fly stunts for movies and go barnstorming across the Midwest, with Phoebe dancing atop the wing of Vernon's plane.
She was both brave and very determined about what she wanted to do. But it was scary times. You know, there weren't any safety belts or, no gear of any kind. She put suction cups on the bottom of her sneakers in order to help her keep her footing on the wings. It was not very good life expectancy for that sort of work, plus it didn't pay worth a hoot. Again, in Vernon's logbook, he's keeping track of money in and money out, and sometimes they didn't clear $10 for a month.
The 1922 flying season ended at the Mid-South Fair in Memphis, and so did Phoebe's barnstorming career. Phoebe and Vernon had to pawn their luggage to get enough money to pay their hotel bill. They had gotten married earlier that year, and Vernon felt that Memphis offered good opportunities, so they settled here. By 1926, they had teamed with other air enthusiasts to open Memphis's first airport. Vernon and Phoebe established Mid-South Airways, offering flying lessons, cargo transport, crop dusting, and airplane sales.
And they're trying to build a legitimate business. What really helps them, actually, is the flood of 1927. But now this is a way to establish a useful legitimacy, and they were flying the mail from Little Rock. They were picking up people stranded on sandbars. They were bringing in medicine. This was really, really dangerous work. And all of a sudden, people start rethinking about what this flying stuff's all about.
That same year, the world's most famous aviator stopped in Memphis on his cross-country celebratory tour promoting aviation. Within 2 years of that visit, Memphis opened its first municipal airport, with Vernon Omley as manager. In 1928, Phoebe became the first woman to enter the Ford Reliability Tour, a 6,000-mile cross-country exhibition of aviation safety. She flew alone.
She refused to take anybody, including a navigator, because she said if there's a man along, they'll think he did all the flying. So I'm going alone. And so she does, and becomes the first woman to fly over the Rocky Mountains in a small plane, over the Great American Desert, as they called it in those days. It was very risky stuff.
The late 20s and early 30s was the heyday for air racing in America. The National Air Race of 1929 marked the first time women were allowed to compete. Phoebe flew alongside 20 other women, including Amelia Earhart, and she won her class. After the 1929 event, Phoebe became one of the founders of the 99s, the first organization of female pilots in the country. Amelia Earhart was elected as the organization's first president.
She and Amelia were probably as close as anybody was to Amelia. Poor Amelia. She was married to G.P. Putnam, who was a big PR guy. And he just made sure she had the latest, greatest, largest, fastest airplanes, but never was enough time to get checked out in them, never was enough time to really learn how to fly them.
In 1937, Amelia was planning her fateful around-the-world flight when Phoebe paid her a visit.
She was very, very concerned about Amelia and that last trip Amelia made, to the point where she went to Miami the night before Amelia took off and said, "Don't do it."
Phoebe's greatest air racing success came in 1931, when the National Air Races allowed women to compete in a handicapped format against men. She beat a field of 63 entrants, including 46 men, to take the title.
And that was big. That was really big. She was national news everywhere when she won that. And it came with a big purse, but mostly what she won was the publicity. And it's Eleanor Roosevelt who sends her a telegram and said, "I'd like you to consider campaigning for my husband who's running for president in 1932. And so she does.
Phoebe flew around the country campaigning for Roosevelt. Her work and her friendship with Eleanor Roosevelt earned her a political appointment in the new administration. In 1933, Phoebe became the first woman to hold an executive job in federal aeronautics. But the transition to a desk job wasn't an easy one.
It was a difficult position to be in. She wasn't trained as a bureaucrat. She was a pilot. A woman in a man's world, all of those sorts of things were very difficult. Still, one of the things that surprised me that I found in the evidence is that her expertise was very much valued. And she, in fact, worked really closely with engineers at Langley Field in aircraft design, in safety features, and that sort of thing. They really paid attention to her.
Unfortunately, it didn't take Phoebe long to hit the glass ceiling.
The only way she thought she could challenge that was just to be as competent as she could, to demonstrate that she could do this job and do it well. But it's very frustrating when it's not recognized.
In 1936, Vernon died in a plane crash as a passenger aboard a commercial flight. After his death, Phoebe stopped flying. She remained a bureaucrat throughout the war years, but became disillusioned with the Truman administration and its negative attitude towards civil aviation. In January of 1952, frustrated and embittered, Phoebe resigned from government and walked away from aviation altogether.
She becomes extremely right-wing. I mean, she goes way over to what would now be the Tea Party. At those days, it was the John Birch Society. I mean, the Tea Party and the ultra-right is not a new phenomenon in America. It just has different names. But she becomes very much enamored by that and ends up sort of devoting her last years to fighting those kinds of fights.
The last 20 years of Phoebe's life are almost a mystery, as she becomes increasingly obsessed with anti-communism, states' rights issues, and right-wing politics.
For about 12 years, she just traveled from place to place. She would stay with old aviation friends. She would stop in a town and put an ad in the paper to be a companion for elderly ladies and do lighthouse work. And she would just keep moving. She finally ends up in Indianapolis, Indiana in 1970, and she dies 5 years later in a flea bag hotel, the kind of place where you keep your milk on the windowsill to keep it cool. It's very, very, very sad. Completely alone, completely estranged, broke, victim of lung cancer, poverty. What a sad end.
Phoebe Omley was buried alongside her husband Vernon here in Memphis at Forest Hill Cemetery. One obituary writer wrote, "Without a plane, she was like a bird with a broken wing." One of the most popular shows on PBS is Downton Abbey, the chronicle of an aristocratic British family transitioning from the Victorian era into the modern world. Memphis has its own Downton Abbey, albeit a smaller version, in the Mallory Neely House, a perfectly preserved museum that offers visitors a window into the world of Victorian-era Memphis. In 1852, wealthy banker Isaac Kirtland bought 3 acres of land on what was then the outskirts of Memphis and built a 2-story home for his family. In 1883, a cotton merchant named James Columbus Neely bought the house and began the ornate renovations that have created the Mallory Neely House that we see today.
The collections, the furnishings, the interiors are all original to the house and the family. And so what we see in the house is as the Neelys had decorated it at the turn of the century. And it's one intact, authentic piece. It's not a conglomeration of sort of period or of the style of kind of era. They're the actual pieces, they're the actual, collections that the family had. So it's like they walked out down the street to go to church or something, and we get to step into their house and see how they lived.
It's remarkable to find any Victorian-era home with so many of its original fixtures intact.
I guess one of the most striking things is when you first come into the house, the entry doors themselves, the stained glass windows are from the World's Fair, from Chicago. And also when you walk into the entry room, the entry hall, which is the grand hall, this is where you in Victorian times you show your prominence, and it sets the tone for the house. It was a very public space, very elegant and opulent. You see up the grand staircase, the stained glass window on the landing. That also was purchased by the Neelys after the Chicago World's Fair.
The house has 25 rooms and approximately 16,000 square feet. The Italianate architecture and high Victorian style are evident everywhere. Look up and you'll see frescoes on the ceiling and elaborate plasterwork. That's not burl wood inlay on the doors. It's faux wood grain painting, which was very popular with the Victorians. The double parlor is filled with imported furniture and expensive carpets, all designed to impress visitors. 2 massive gaslight chandeliers hang from the ceiling, a remnant of the days before Thomas Edison invented the light bulb. And in one corner is an embroidered silk screen from China that the Neelys purchased at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904.
Each of the 4 panels represents one of the seasons of the year. And it's a teak wood frame, and that piece was actually chosen to be sent to the St. Louis World's Fair by the last Empress Dowager of China.
Portraits of James Neely and his wife overlook the dining room table with seating for up to 24 people. The family would dress for dinner and be served by a staff of 7. And the servants made sure the business of the house ran smoothly.
The house was heated by coal fireplaces, 20 coal fireplaces throughout the house, and that took a lot of work to keep all that going. And the rooms had servants' call buttons, bells, to push to have someone come and see what your need was. There's actually, there was a mechanism under the floor in the dining room where the master of the house could press it down with his foot to call someone to come to attend to the table.
Behind the main house is the servants' quarters. Prior to emancipation, this was the home to the house's slaves. Little is known about their names or their lives. The rooms upstairs are not as elegant as their downstairs counterparts. After the turn of the century, the Neelys' youngest daughter, Daisy, married cotton merchant Barton Mallory, and their family lived on the 2nd floor. Daisy's sister Pearl and her family occupied the 3rd floor. The last resident of the house was Daisy's daughter, Frances. Affectionately known as Miss Daisy, she lived in the house with her female companion, an African-American woman named Annie Bess, who had been a chambermaid for Daisy's parents.
After her husband passed away and Miss Daisy's husband passed away, because their age was only 10 years separate, and they'd known each other for decades, and Annie Bess moved into the house. It was just so sort of interesting and very, 1940s, 50s Memphis, very unusual to have an elderly, white lady and elderly black lady both living side by side in the bedrooms upstairs in the mansion.
Daisy Neely Mallory died in 1969 at the age of 98, having witnessed nearly a century of changes to the world surrounding her home. She wanted the house preserved as a museum, and today it stands as one of the finest examples of Victorian-era residences in the country.
This is one place that's been here unchanged for 160 years. It is a moment captured in time.
It was Thomas Jefferson who penned the words "Pursuit of Happiness" in our Declaration of Independence. Thankfully, Jefferson didn't try to define happiness for Americans. That's up to us. Are you happy? There's a surprising body of research that points to the conclusion that people actually get happier as they get older. Maybe it takes a lifetime pursuing happiness to finally catch up with it. Are you happier now than when you were younger, and why or why not?
Well, I'm happier now, but probably because I'm a little older and a little wiser.
I'm happy now because I'm enjoying life.
Oh, I think I'm happier now. I've got grandchildren, I'm retired, I can play with them, and yeah, life is good.
I'm happier now in a different way because now I know where I am and where I'm going, whereas when I was younger I wasn't sure and I was searching. But I'm very content and very happy.
I had a very happy childhood, but I will say I'm probably as happy now.
No, I was probably happier when I was younger, had better health.
I'm more content. I'm not trying to achieve anymore, I'm enjoying what I have.
Oftentimes when we're younger, we're doing things maybe that we have to do or we feel like we need to do, but now I can do what I want to do, and I love it.
I've learned a lot, and I know how to be happier.
It's not about material things, but it's about having the relationships with your family and your friends, and that's what makes me happy.
The Stanford Center on Longevity identifies what they call the paradox of aging. The recognition that we won't live forever changes our perspective on life in positive, not negative ways. To find out more about the link between aging and happiness, I invited two guests into our studio. Sarah Prosser is the Administrative Assistant for the Professional Network on Aging, and Dr. Richard Lightsey is Associate Professor of Counseling Psychology at the University of Memphis. I want to begin by asking the two of you the same question that I asked those people at the Germantown Senior Expo. Are you happier now than when you were younger, and why or why not? Sarah, let's start with you.
Well, I believe I'm happier now because there's less stress about peer pressure. If you are smart when you're younger, to try to save money and be prepared for your retirement, then your retirement should be pleasant and enjoyable with your friends and making your own plans and doing as you please.
So you're happier now?
I think I am.
All right, Dr. Lightsey, how about you?
Definitely. In fact, I've noticed every decade I've been happier than the previous decade.
That's interesting. Why?
I think this mirrors the literature quite nicely in that I have better social relations, deeper friendships that I have. I allocate my time better than I used to, I think, doing the things I most enjoy and that give me the most meaning. I've met many of the goals that I set for myself, And for others that I haven't yet reached, like writing the great American novel, I've kind of toned it down a bit, you know, to writing scholarly products that contribute to knowledge in the field, and maybe an occasional creative essay that I've yet to get to.
Is it just life experience? That we're better at life now as we get older that makes us happier as we age?
There's quite a bit of evidence that older adults relative to younger adults are less sensitive to negative life events, sad and disturbing music, other kinds of negative stimulation. And so young people react much more strongly. And it's been theorized, in fact, and there are at least a couple of studies supporting it, that decrease in amygdala functioning might to some degree account for the lower negative affect that older people have compared to younger people. I don't think that explains all of it though, because older adults also have more positive emotion and life satisfaction than younger adults.
Does our definition of happiness change as we age? Has it changed for you?
I just think we learn the important things. Perhaps when we're younger, we go in lots of different directions, not knowing, but once we know ourselves and know what brings our joy, joy comes from within, and happiness are for outer things. And as you grow older, you still, if you're active, you're still doing lots of things, but the happiness, you don't go helter-skelter. You sort of have a plan, and not having a timetable on doing certain things, you can do more of what you want when you want to do it.
Older people experience less intense or calmer positive feelings. And looking in myself, I think the happiness that I feel now is a calmer sort of happiness than maybe I felt at peak moments in younger life.
Is it the fact that we all mellow out as we age? The highs aren't as high, the lows aren't as low?
I think that's one way of saying it. Yeah, I think that's correct.
Let's talk about health and the role that it plays in this equation of happiness as we age. What factor does health play?
My little theory goes back with how you were when you're 20s, when you're 80. If you were happy then, you're happy now, even with bad illnesses.
Health is a strong predictor of happiness. Healthier people tend to be happier. But it's also true among older people that even though they report bigger discrepancies compared to younger people in the health they want to have, that is, health aspirations versus the health they actually have, they're still happier. And possibly that's because they've achieved their goals or have downgraded their goals. There's less of a discrepancy between the social and achievement-related goals they had and the ones that they've accomplished. And so, but it does look like, if you look across people, that older people can maintain higher happiness despite health problems. And I believe, although I don't know of evidence about that, that some of that is about acceptance of things, acceptance of mortality, acceptance of limitations, and just seeing that as a natural part of life, and compensating by finding other things that give joy as capacities in particular realms diminish.
I had read this statement, which I'll paraphrase, but basically it is, says that happiness is a journey, not a destination. What do you think about that?
That's good. I like that.
Do you find that true in your own life?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Reminds me of the flow literature, showing that insofar as we can immerse ourselves in the stream of experience and be here and now, and there is evidence that older adults are more here and now than younger adults, and that partly accounts for their increased happiness. But yeah, I think the idea of being able to flow with experience and of happiness being a process of learning to immerse yourself in the here and now and the activities that you value and that give meaning is very important.
I'd like to thank both of you for being on The Best Times, and I wish both of you a very happy day.
Oh, thank you.
Want more information about life after 50? Go to our website, wkno.org/besttimes, and email your feedback and story ideas to besttimes@wkno.org. Thanks for watching. I'm Chris Hardaway. Good night. Funding for the Best Times is provided by Trezevant, a life care community, a celebration of life. The responsible decision for your well-being now and in the long term. And being responsible has never been such a hoot. TrezevantManor.org. The Best Times is the only monthly news magazine exclusively for the age 50-plus reader. Your copy is free at over 200 locations, with important stories and news you don't want to miss. The Best Times is always the best. Since 1988, the H.W. Durham Foundation has been focused on aging issues, providing grants to programs like The Best Times to enrich and improve the quality of life for our older citizens.